The night was quiet but not silent. In the shadows of a busy African street, a young mother bent over a trash bin, her trembling hands digging through filth, desperate to find just one scrap of food for her crying baby. Her eyes were swollen with tears, her dignity crushed by hunger, but her love for her child was stronger than shame. Now pause for a moment. What would you do if you saw such a sight? Walk away like the others, pretending not to notice? Or stop and change a life forever? That night, a man did stop. Not just any man, but one of the richest billionaires in the city. And what he did next left the mother speechless, and the whole world watching in awe. This is not just a story about wealth. It's about compassion, second chances, and how one act of kindness can rewrite a destiny. If this story already has your heart racing, don't forget to hit that like button. It really helps this channel grow. Make sure you subscribe so you won't miss our next emotional tale. And hey, share this video with someone who needs a reminder that kindness is more powerful than gold. Now, let's dive into the chapters of this unforgettable story. The city lights flickered like tired stars, casting long shadows on the cracked pavements of Lagos. It was late, a time when most families were gathered at their tables or already tucked in bed. But for Esther, there was no table, no bed, and no home to call her own. She sat under a broken shed by the roadside, her clothes dirty, her scarf torn. In her arms lay her baby, tiny, fragile, and crying with the kind of hunger that pierces a mother's soul. Esther rocked him gently, whispering, "Please don't cry, my child. Mommy is here, please." But words cannot fill an empty stomach. His cries only grew louder. And as they echoed through the night, passersby looked away. Some shook their heads. Others muttered under their breath. Nobody stopped. Nobody cared. Esther's stomach had been empty since morning, but that didn't matter. What broke her heart was her baby's trembling lips and his weak, helpless sobs. She pressed him closer to her chest, trying to share whatever warmth she had left. Tears filled her eyes as she whispered a prayer. "God, if you see me, don't let my child go hungry tonight." Yet silence answered her. The hunger grew unbearable. Esther had begged earlier in the day on her knees, with hands stretched out, asking strangers for a coin. A piece of bread, anything. One man had spat harshly. "Am I the father of your child?" "Leave me alone." Others passed without even a glance. Her pride was gone, her shame already trampled. What else could she lose? Slowly, she tied her baby onto her back with the torn scarf and stood on shaky legs. She walked down the street until her eyes caught sight of something she had always avoided: rows of trash bins at the far end of the road. She froze. The thought made her stomach turn. But her baby's weak cry broke her hesitation. Whispering to him through tears, she said, "Forgive me, my son. Mommy has no choice." With trembling hands, she lifted the lid. The stench hit her nose: instantly rotten food, spoiled milk, buzzing flies. She gagged, but she pressed forward. Digging through bags and scraps, her fingers brushed against something soft. A piece of bread, hard, stale, covered in dirt. She brushed it off again and again with her scarf. Then she found half an apple, half bitten, but still edible. Her heart sank, but she sat down on the cold ground beside the bin. She broke the bread into small pieces, tasting one herself first. Then she chewed another and carefully placed it on her baby's lips. His tiny mouth opened eagerly, and Esther cried quietly as she fed him. But she didn't know someone was watching. Just a few meters away, a sleek black SUV had stopped. Inside sat Daniel Kingsley, one of the city's most powerful billionaires. He was on his way home from a long business meeting, tired and restless, his mind full of numbers, contracts, and empty conversations. Yet what he saw that night froze his world. A mother in rags, bent over a trash bin. A crying baby. A piece of stale bread. Daniel leaned back in his seat, his heart thudding. He had signed million-dollar checks to charities before. He'd sponsored feeding programs. But none of that compared to the raw reality before his eyes. This was hunger not written on paper, but alive, desperate, and heartbreaking. He watched as Esther cleaned the apple with her torn scarf and whispered to her baby before feeding him. Something in Daniel cracked open. For the first time in years, he felt his own eyes sting with tears. He couldn't just sit there. Without a second thought, Daniel pushed open his door and stepped out of the SUV. His footsteps echoed on the pavement. Esther froze when she heard them. She clutched her baby tighter and turned her head sharply. A tall man in a suit was walking toward her. His shoes were polished, his frame strong, his presence intimidating. Her heart raced. What did he want? Was he another man who would mock her, or worse, try to take advantage of her misery? She wiped her tears quickly, stood to her feet, and backed away, hiding the bread in her hand. Fear filled her chest. Daniel stopped just a few steps away. He could see the panic in her eyes. He softened his voice and asked gently, "Are you hungry?" Esther looked down, ashamed, too embarrassed to answer. Daniel took a careful step closer. "It's okay," he said softly. "I saw you. You don't need to hide. I can buy you some food." Esther shook her head quickly, whispering, "No, sir. I have nothing to give you in return." But her baby began crying again, louder, weaker, desperate. And that sound broke Daniel's heart in a way no business deal ever could. Morning crept into the city slowly. The sun rose pale over Lagos, its light spilling across dusty roads, abandoned kiosks, and restless traffic. Esther was still awake. She had spent the whole night by the broken shed, holding her baby close, afraid to close her eyes. Beside her lay the empty food bag, the first real meal her child had eaten in days. She could still hear his soft sighs as he slept, his little chest rising and falling with new strength. That sound was the only comfort she had. But the question gnawed at her. Who was that man? Why did he stop for me? In the world Esther knew, men in suits drove past beggars, as if they were ghosts. Yet this one had walked toward her, bought food, and spoken gently as though she mattered. She shook her head, unable to believe it. Maybe he pitied me. Maybe I'll never see him again. But she was wrong. At that very moment, Daniel sat in his mansion miles away, staring at the untouched breakfast on his glass table. His chef had prepared the usual fresh fruits, golden toast, steaming tea, but Daniel's appetite was gone. He couldn't erase the image from his mind. A mother digging through trash to feed her baby. He had signed contracts worth billions. He had traveled the world. Yet that night had unsettled him in ways he couldn't explain. For the first time, wealth felt empty. Daniel leaned back in his chair and muttered, "I need to find her again." By mid-morning, his black SUV rolled back to the same street corner. His driver, puzzled, asked, "Sir, are you sure about this place? It's dangerous." Daniel only nodded. "Stop here." And there she was. Esther sat on the pavement, her baby awake now, trying to chew on his tiny fingers. Her hair was rough, her clothes still torn. But there was something different in her eyes, like the faint glow of someone who had seen mercy. Daniel stepped out. The sound of the SUV door startled Esther. She turned quickly, her body tensing. It was him. Her lips parted, but no words came out. Daniel raised his hand in a small wave. "Good morning." Esther lowered her gaze, embarrassed. "Good morning, sir." For a moment, silence hung between them. Cars honked in the distance, hawkers shouted, but here, time seemed to pause. Daniel cleared his throat. "Have you eaten today?" Esther shook her head slowly. "Not yet." Daniel nodded, then gestured to his driver, who carried 2 bags from the car, one filled with hot food, the other with bottled water and baby formula. Esther's eyes widened. Her mouth trembled. "Sir, why are you doing this? You don't even know me?" Daniel looked at her, his voice calm but heavy. "Because last night you reminded me that money means nothing if people are still starving." Esther clutched the food bag tightly, unable to hold back tears. She whispered, "God sent you." Daniel didn't reply. He'd just watched her baby's tiny hands reaching for the formula, and his chest tightened again. But he knew food was not enough. Something deeper told him this woman's story was not ordinary. There was pain hidden in her silence, a past that had driven her to the streets. So Daniel asked gently, "Tell me, what happened to you?" Esther froze. The question cut too deep. Her lips trembled as memories flooded back, memories she had buried beneath shame and silence. For a long moment, she said nothing. Only her baby's quiet breathing filled the space. Finally, in a broken whisper, she replied, "Sir, I was not always like this." Her words lingered in the air, heavy with mystery. Daniel leaned closer, his eyes fixed on her. "Then tell me. Tell me everything." Esther looked at him, unsure if she could trust this stranger with her wounds. But something in his eyes, something honest, something human urged her to speak. And so, with tears clinging to her lashes, Esther began to tell the story of how her world had fallen apart. The city roared on, but in that small corner, time slowed. A billionaire had returned, and a beggar woman had opened her lips to speak the truth she had hidden for years. Her story was about to begin, and Daniel, though he did not yet know it, was about to be written into it.